or affect women in different ways from men. Now, to tell us more, or rather to discuss women and mental health, is social worker from Islamic Care line, Shuhaida Adam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Shuhaida. Shukran for joining me.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure to be on your show again.
Alhamdulillah, it's always a pleasure to have you joining me. Alhamdulillah. All right. So, mental health, women and mental health. I know this is a topic that we always discuss whenever we get the chance to. And now that it's Women's Month, why not talk about it even more? So, let's start off with good mental health. What is good mental health?
If we look at the definition of mental health is an all-encompassing component of our lives, and it consists of our emotional, our psychological, and our social well-being. Okay, three components which are, however, affected by internal and external factors. Our emotional well-being relates to how we feel and how we respond to our feelings, how we're able to cope with our feelings. Emotional well-being is a lot more individualized. Our psychological well-being also looks at our thought patterns, our thought processes, which can also be influenced by our backgrounds, our childhood, our environment around us. Our social well-being, which refers to our interactions with people, our relationships and our significant relationships we build with others, the support we feel we get from others, our understanding of our place in society also. So when there is balance in that, and when there is generally, when our needs are being met, our emotional needs, our psychological needs, and our social needs, generally our mental health is then in quite a healthy space. The nature of life, of course, is that there are ups and downs. We hit stumbling blocks, we hit challenges, we hit disappointments, we hit moments of tragedy, we hit moments of trauma, which is a natural part of life. When we have a healthy sense of mental health, our coping skills will then be able to tide us over these challenges. It will get us through this. It will help us cope with it. It will help us make sense of this, or whatever it is that we have gone through and that we're referring to. However, when we are not in a very good space, when these components are not fully developed, or when the needs of these components of our emotional, our psychological, and social well-being, when those are not being met, we then struggle to cope with a lot of the world around us. And it can get to a point where even if there are no real challenges, where there's no real external difficulties or external stresses, but if our psychological and emotional well-being is not in a good space, then we can be may have an unhealthy way of coping with really not even facing any challenges. So things can be going very smoothly, but we are not doing okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean that just because we don't have challenges that our mental health is going to be in a wonderful place, or the fact that we do have challenges, our mental health is going to be in a very poor place. It's very much individualized, dependent on each individual circumstances. However, there tends to be general patterns that we can talk about in general, especially relating to specific populations. So when we look at the population of women also, of course, each person's experience is different. Their background, their socioeconomic circumstances also can impact on their mental health well-being. But we can look at certain commonalities that are currently being experienced.
Now, how can we recognize mental health issues? I feel like there's mental health is a broad spectrum, and there's so much that we still need to learn, but we only know so much about specific mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety, but there's a whole lot more than that. So how can we recognize mental health issues?
No, definitely there's, like you say, it's a big field out there. And we learn a lot about the more extreme situations. So we learn about the disorders, or we learn about the psychiatric conditions. Most of us will have heard of things like bipolar, schizotypal disorders,
Mm.
depression, anxiety. So we hear a lot about the labels, or we hear about behaviors like self-harm, suicide, and that tells us, okay, there's a mental health problem there. But those are a little further down the line of the mental health problem. Early signs include something as simple as irritability, insomnia.
Mm-hmm.
Often people don't recognize the early warning signs. It's seen as just a general part of your life. If you're not able to sleep, it's not really recognized as a problem. Generally, it's not really recognized as a problem. However, we actually have to look at the bigger picture. Early signs that psychologists warn us about are things like uh, something as simple as having a lack of interest in the world around you. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not something we can label, but something as simple as that will tell us that there is possibly going to be a problem relating to somebody's mental health. So things like lack of interest, irritability, insomnia, high stress, um, psychological distress, or even an old trauma that the person has not really thought about in a while. If a lot of thoughts around that trauma comes back for no real reason, or if something has happened to trigger again the memories of that trauma, um, then that is also early signs that a person needs to look at. Then also, if we look a bit at moods, either way there's a swing in mood, so a person is struggling with uh, not necessarily a swing as in, very much up and down right now in the moment, but where
Mm-hmm.
there's it's an unusual pattern of this person's moods. So it's not normal. If a person generally would the anger, for example, something like anger, if they were quite happy with the way they handled anger, or they had a generally healthy manner of handling anger,
Mm-hmm.
and recent times they experienced a few challenges, and now their ability to manage their anger is being impacted. That tells us when their mental health is being impacted. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
always with people also, we want them to look at what's not being normal for them. Where are they out of sorts, so to say? Where has change occurred? And if it's not for the best, then we would look at, is it possible that your mental health is now being affected? So even things like stresses, different kinds of stresses, and especially with our recent past from last year up to this year with the COVID and the different outcomes and the constraints that it's put on us, people may not also recognize just how much of an impact the pandemic has had on their mental health.
Mm.
So even things like not being able to engage in your usual recreational activities, your usual self-care activities, being exposed to constant negative news, being exposed to constant loss. I think many people in our communities, they get notifications of funerals that are occurring in the community. They're recognizing the names of people who pass away, if it's not actual close family members or in their homes and significant others. So even stresses and grief, um, when a person is struggling with it, and it's very much at this point, it's quite natural to not really cope with it at this point, because of the overwhelmingness of living within this pandemic, and also the lack of support that we're getting around it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
either the resources are just not available, or people are not able to access those resources.
Mm-hmm. And how do we make these resources available to people?
So ideally, um, all of us working together to provide it. So government working together with the NGOs, working with civil society, and trying to bring resources to the communities. We always recommend that people try to access what is easily accessible,
Mm.
because it's a bit more, there's less challenges to go for an appointment. So ideally, every community should be having some form of a mental health facility, or some form of mental health services. However, of course, it's just not really been happening. The people who are already working in the field, they are very stretched out. Um, and they find that there's a bit of poor support also, so they may experience burnout themselves. And when people working in the field experience burnout, they then have to step back. So that's again a loss of resources to the communities. So ideally, we'd like for everybody to be able to work together. Also encouraging people to go into those fields. So our high school students, if they would consider studying degrees within the mental health field, doing some trainings within the mental health field, and our work environments, promoting positive mental health in our families and in our communities, encouraging people to talk about mental health, encouraging people, if there are services in the community, encouraging people to actually reach out to it. I read a stat this morning that in 2019, though, just about 27% of South Africans who reported to have a severe mental illness actually reported receiving some form of treatment. That's 27% of people with a severe mental illness, which is a very, very low amount, receiving some form of treatment. It's telling us that the remainder receives no form of treatment, and they are living in, we are all as a community, we are coexisting with people who are really in need of care, but they do not access this. There's a few reasons, I suppose, also why they don't access it. Yes, the actual availability of resources, and also the stigma in our communities, whether people are receiving support through their mental health problems, or is it just swept under the carpet, or is it unrecognized?
Yeah, I know we've got a long way to go, especially as a community, and talking about mental health issues, mental health in general. What are the most common mental health issues that affect women in particular?
Okay, so for women, women, the circumstances women experience, especially in South Africa, it's also, we look at factors such as GBV. We look at factors such as lack of resources. So women who experience something like postnatal depression. So South Africa, there are a lot of births happening. I don't have the exact statistic for us right now, but every year there are many births that occur. And women in South Africa, they give birth under very difficult circumstances. So either in their own personal lives, or even in the actual the clinical setting. There are women who give birth under where they don't have the sufficient medical care, or they haven't accessed enough maternal health resources. It can possibly also lead to postnatal depression, and women who don't have the financial means to access resources, women who are not supported by their partner. So there are many women who give birth without the support of the child's father. children during working hours, or they'd run a daycare, that kind of a thing. And because they have now lost their lives to COVID, we don't have those resources anymore. So anxiety starts with people feeling overwhelmed and stressed and unable to cope with whatever the demands are. We found self-harm, suicidal behavior also. It's on the increase. It's very much there. With women, it's more a cry for help. With a lot of men, they are more likely to succeed. Women are more likely to attempt.
Mm-hmm.
So self-harm behavior, especially with young women, our adolescent girls, self-harm tends to start in the adolescent age group, and young women may then carry this behavior over into adulthood also.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's quite prevalent in our communities. And then also substance use, habits that are forming. People are turning to drugs and alcohol to cope with the difficulties in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So we're finding that. And also a lot of rehabs and a lot of treatment centers closed during the lockdown or during just the impact generally of COVID. So resources also there to treat that are very minimal. And then a general sense of hopelessness, a sense of overwhelmedness, a sense of fear for the future, fear for loved ones. We find that that's very, very common at the moment. People are exposed to a lot of negative news. It's impacting their well-being. So in terms of psychiatric disorders, I think a lot of people haven't gone to access a treatment, and many people have defaulted on treatment during the lockdown and during COVID also. In terms of our actual medical systems, a lot of them are focusing quite a bit on COVID, and they became overwhelmed, leading them to possibly not be able to meet the current patients' needs. So we have quite a bit that we are facing as a nation, quite severe issues and challenges that we are facing as a nation.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Shuhaida, we're going to take a quick break and we will continue, inshallah. So please stay with us.
At this time of trial and worry, the blessings of charity are the ideal means to avoid calamity and despair. The Al-Imdad Foundation gives you the opportunity to sponsor a share in a borehole in South Africa for just 1,000 Rand and provide what the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, called the best form of charity. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Looking to get your kick? Kiki's have now reopened on 235 Matthews Maiwa Road in Durban. Head on over for the Taste with Kick. We offer something scrumptious for everyone in the family. Wraps, chicken tikka, burgers, tender grills, mocktails, milkshakes, and so much more. Corporate and events catering available. Visit our social media pages for more info or call 031 209 0119. Kiki's, the Taste with Kick.
The two major dams for the Eastern Cape's biggest metro, Nelson Mandela Bay, are running dry with no major rain forecast. The city of Port Elizabeth is facing an unprecedented water crisis, home to an estimated 1.3 million people. The Al-Fida Foundation needs your support to deliver water to impoverished areas. Support our water drive and help us raise monies for water delivery vehicles to ensure water distribution in areas of critical need. Donate your lillah to the Al-Fida Foundation. Visit our website at www.alfida.co.za or contact us at 041 484 1288.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
From the townships of South Africa, the refugee camps in Syria, or orphanages in Yemen, the eyes of the needy speak volumes with just one glare. We know what it's like to be at ground zero, with food essentials, clothing and blankets, fresh water portal trucks, and even on-site navigators. We use every cent to better their tomorrow. Become part of our journey to bring relief to all. Go to www.ashrafulaid.org or call us on 011-809-8181. Ashraful Aid, under the auspices of Maulana Suhail Wadi.
He stepped inside his home, he was overwhelmed with fear. An angel came with words from God, things were still unclear. Saying, read, read, but he could not read. Amazing words that he heard. A trembling deep inside his heart, confused by what had occurred. There was only one who could comfort him, to help him see the light, to ease his fears, to reassure, was Khadija, his wife. He said, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, Dathiruni, Dathiruni, a mighty task has come before me. I need you here with me, by my side, by my side. She was a woman of nobility, successful in all her trade. Many wealthy men had asked for her, she turned them all away. But when she saw Muhammad, a shining moon, may peace be on his soul. He was a light for her, so right for her.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media with me, Maryam, Mkwanda, and we are talking about women and mental health with Shuhaida Adam from Islamic Care line. Women are nearly twice as likely as men to be diagnosed with a mental illness such as depression, and depression can occur at any age. Some mood changes and depressed feelings occur with normal hormonal changes, but hormonal changes alone don't cause depression. Other biological factors, inherited traits, and personal life circumstances and experiences are associated with a higher risk of depression. So Shuhaida is still with me. Shukran for staying with us. Assalamu alaikum, Shuhaida. Now, how do gender differences affect women's health, mental health?
Alaikum salam. Shukran. Let's carry on with the conversation. Gender differences. So if we look at, you spoke a little bit about hormonal differences.
Mm-hmm.
We look at social differences. How do we raise our boy child? How do our young men get perceived in society versus our young women? That can also influence how we feel about ourselves, how women adapt to their place in society, to finding a role in society, which can also play an impact on their mental health. The support systems that we offer, the support we offer women versus men, how do we accept certain behaviors from men versus women, and how do we respond to that? How do we voice disapproval to men and women in society? It can be quite different. The environments that we also, the resources that we also offer men versus women can also vary. I mean, if you look at the work environment, the safety of the work environment, a lot of women find it, they find themselves not entirely accepted. They find that they are not entirely catered for.
Mm-hmm.
So the needs of a woman, especially single parents or certain women who have maybe they have young children who need them, their needs are not catered for. So they are often trying to juggle, trying to fit into this work environment, trying to maintain a sense of safety, trying to fulfill their roles of a parent and a child, so maybe caring for adult parents, also more responsibility on them. So it can be overwhelming, and that can contribute to our growing rates of depression and our growing rates of stress, and which may lead to a breakdown also. When we do need help, what is available for us?
Mm-hmm.
Even in our treatment centers, is it personalized for gender, or is it just seen as a one-size-fits-all and one treatment program is just for both men and women? Okay, so there are, in a few countries I've heard of how they are prioritizing changing treatment programs
Mm-hmm.
to adapt to the needs specifically of women. Maybe look also at economic opportunities, education opportunities. A lot more boys are seen as more likely to graduate or to complete matric. The health care that is offered to girls, the personal care that is offered to them, that has an impact on their mental health well-being. There is a significant difference also.
Mm-hmm. How can we improve women's mental health?
Okay, so earlier you spoke about how can communities improve access to mental health.
Yes.
Something that I just thought of also is how communities can take a little bit of control and try to create a service within their community. So maybe encouraging people to do some basic counseling training, basic support training, and trying to work under an individual. So providing some counseling services, which doesn't necessarily have to be a full, office setup. It can be held even at existing community centers, existing school environments, offering very basic support services, which I think could be quite significant in communities also. If I look at Islamic Care Line, it also started off on a volunteer basis. It started off back in the 90s also, a volunteer basis. It had, we didn't really have premises. We were borrowing premises also. So because all of these services have a potential to grow, I would recommend communities look into something like that. It can consist of a group of people. It doesn't even have to be the entire community. A group of people coming together and trying to just capacitate themselves to be able to provide basic support in their communities. And then, of course, how do we develop our communities? How do we develop our individuals who will then improve in their communities? One of the key things we always talk about is parenting and the impact of raising children from small with healthy coping skills, so that when they are older, they are then able to address their challenges and face their challenges in a very in a healthy way. And when they recognize they're not coping, they can then reach out for help and support each other. So long term, we're looking at parenting. And when we talk about parenting, improving parenting skills, developing people's parenting skills, it actually starts even from pre-birth.
Mm-hmm.
So expectant mothers, expectant fathers, and even caregivers. So if the grandma is still going to be very much a part of the child's life, even them learning about, raising children, how to look after a child in the first year of birth, which is not just about feeding and bathing and cleaning and making sure the child sleeps. It's also how do you build a relationship? How do you improve that connection with your infant, with the newborn? Keeping an eye out for postnatal depression, normalizing it, so that if somebody suspects they may have postnatal depression, they then do not feel shame and hold themselves back from seeking any form of treatment. So it starts from a very young, building the relationship between parent and child. And look, even if it's a single parent home or it's not even the parent raising the child, you can still form a significant relationship with this child or with the children in the home, with the right support and with the right development. And that makes such a difference for this child and in their personal development. So it starts also from the home environment. And then, of course, us as a community, as a society, building a safe environment for women, ensuring economic opportunities also, because worrying about poverty, worrying about finances, it plays a major role in people's ability to cope with difficulty that comes their way. That can be extremely overwhelming. Something like losing a loved one. If a woman is unemployed and her loved one is the breadwinner, she can go for grief support, she can go for counseling. However, if her greatest stress is now about financial support, it's going to still have a very strong impact on her. And if there are children, then the children within the home as well. So one of the greatest things that we as a society can do is create more equal socio-economic opportunities for our women particularly. Especially also older women, middle-aged women who possibly had left the work environment to raise their children, and they are now placed in a situation where they suddenly need to re-enter the work environment. They haven't been working for a good few years, so they face the daunting task of suddenly having to adapt to a brand new working environment, depending on whichever qualification they have. Women who don't have a qualification even, trying to just see whatever they can get. And I think we've spoken previously about the high rate of unemployment and the current state of South Africa's economy. Our socio-economic opportunities are very, very difficult to address. So I think that's two of the key things I can identify for now. And then, of course, the support. So reducing the stigma in our communities, in our families is very critical. We tend to spend more time with families and close friends. So in our social circles, if we can reduce the stigma, talk about it, normalize it, share experiences, and encourage each other to go for help. Any form of help, even if you suspect that somebody has a severe mental disorder, but the person is not willing to go to a psychiatrist initially, reaching out maybe to a counselor first, and then we just take it from there. So the journey to mental health well-being, it can start with a simple step, and then we just take it from there. So the support, the encouragement, reducing of stigma, normalizing that we will struggle in life and it's okay to seek help.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, it is okay to seek help. There is nothing wrong with that, especially if you know that you have a problem and you won't be able to cope. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have, Shuhaida. You know, time always flies when we're chatting. But shukran so much for taking the time to join me and to share that information with us. And until next time, inshallah.
Awesome. Jazakallah khair for affording the time to such important topics that we need to discuss as a community. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shuhaida Adam